For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber. This is Derrick Evans. It's Friday, and we've just finished another week in America's new glorious golden age.
Yes, sir. Hey, guys, as always, like, share, subscribe. We really appreciate you guys. We made it to another Friday. You're going to go into an awesome weekend. Whatever platform you're watching on, hop in the chat, leave a comment. I'll do my best. I'll read them all, but I'll do my best to give you guys a shout out. We've got Kelly Song and Dan Dreyer over here in the Rumble chat. We got Sean in the Getter chat. And then over here in the X chat, we already got Thaddeus and Jim Bart. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We got an awesome show lined up for you guys today. We got an awesome guest, Peter Mcilvenna. I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong. I said I was going to say it correctly, and I turned around and messed it up. Introduce yourself.
It is longer than Evans, so I get that. My name is Peter Mcilvenna. I run Hearts of Oak podcast, have done for the last 5 years in the UK, and kind of that launched at the end of UKIP. That was the party that got Brexit. When we achieved that, we thought, what do we do? And we thought, let's start an educational organization. Then 2 weeks later, we went into worldwide lockdown. What a stupid time to launch an organization. So we decided, well, we need to do something. Let's pivot to media. So 800 interviews later, and it's been a fun ride, connect with people all over. And today means I can connect with Mike and Derrick. So that's what it's all about, connecting with like-minded people around the world and seeing what we can do together that we can't do by ourselves.
Yeah, and we're really happy to have added you here recently. We're now going to rebroadcast or broadcast your podcast here on X America News. You can see them at 4 p.m. and you'll have an episode up tomorrow. We were supposed to launch yesterday, but there was some slight technical difficulties. But going forward, you'll be able to find him here on X America News at 4 p.m. So put it on your calendar. You definitely want to check out Hearts of Oak. I've been a fan of Peter's podcast for a while and watched episodes here on YouTube here and there where I could. You do fantastic work warning the world with everything that's going on, especially in the UK, as you guys slip ever closer into communism.
We are on the edge of that tyranny, and it's great because about half our audience is US for Hearts of Oak, and 45% of our guests are US based. So it is great kind of connecting across the Atlantic and trying to point out, I think, to a US audience what is happening in Londonistan, here where I am in UK, and also Europe having abandoned any biblical basis of a society a long time ago, and what that means when you remove God from a society, then into that void goes anything, and that's what we're seeing with the woke ideology, not only in Europe but over there in the US.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the other thing too, is it's really been like the canary in the coal mine. I feel like for a lot of us here in the U.S. as we've watched the descent into tyranny over there, the war on free speech, throwing people in jail for social media posts, and as you said, Sadiq Khan's Londanistan, where I was just over in Belgium a few weeks ago. I talked to several people. They said I wouldn't even recognize London now. That the last time we were through there was years ago now, and that it looks like a completely different country now.
Oh, it is completely. When I remember growing up, even when I've been in London 22 years, very different from Northern Ireland. It's a monoculture. And you come to London, and now you're hard pushed to find any English person in London. You're hard pushed to find English being spoken. But even outside, I remember going up to Bradford maybe 12 years ago for the first time, up in the Yorkshire heartlands in the middle of England. And that used to be a city that you'd have a church on every corner, and now it's a mosque on every corner. Now the call to prayer, the Islamic call to prayer, is much more prevalent and vocal than church bells ringing. And it shows how far we have moved as a society from any biblical principles that give you freedoms to a tyranny, not only under Islam, but also under just a woke Western ideology.
Peter, I got a question for you, man. Well, first, let me clear some chats. We got Paula Crawley over here from Missouri. We got Austin the Cold Cracker over here. And so let me ask you, I mean, do you get the feeling, whether it's true or not, do you get the feeling or the perception that Islam is now the majority over there? I don't know statistically if it's true or not, but I mean, some of the things you're talking about, it would seem almost as if you're walking down the street and you're in an Islamic country. Is that the feeling on the street and on the ground over there?
Well, I think Islam has stepped into a void when you see Christianity no longer represented in our education system or our political system. I grew up watching the front bench of the House of Commons and seeing great political greats who always talked about their Christian faith. That is gone, whether it's the medical profession. Across the board, it seems as though Christians have withdrawn from the public space, and into that has gone Islam. Now, Islam only represents probably 6% of the UK population, maybe 5.5%. In London, where I live, it's 12%. And Mike mentioned being over in Belgium, and Brussels is 30%. Brussels, the political capital of Europe, is 30% Islamic. And I remember being offered a job with the MEPs there in Brussels, and going there and thinking, I don't think I really want my children to grow up here. And in the end, didn't take that, really, because it would be a concerning place. What values do you hold in that environment? So, and we've seen the riots happening in Paris, which is 15% Islamic, and we haven't seen that happen in the UK apart from the riots at the end of the summer around immigration. But we are positioned to have that clash. One of the reasons we have now 5 or 6 independent MPs who are very strongly Muslim, however you want to call it, Islamists, jihadists, very, very aggressively focused on Islam being the dominant ideology. And we've never had that kind of sectarianism in Parliament, in our politics before, but we're seeing that more and more. So we're certainly moving towards that. And Islam moves because it is forceful, it is aggressive, it comes across as confident, and into that you have a weak Church of England that doesn't know what it stands for, and talks more about confusion, or talks more about kind of a lack of identity. And into that steps Islam, and that provides a confidence, especially to young people, and that's what's really concerning.
So Peter, we talk a lot in America and say that Europe has fallen, and part of that is we say that, I say that, I shouldn't speak for everybody else. I say that partly out of ignorance. I mean, I see what I see, you know what I mean, and I make that comment, and it doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but for someone who lives there, and I see this happening across all the chats right now too. Everybody in the chats is like, Europe is falling, London is falling, and I agree with that. That's like the American sentiment right now. Has it fallen? Is there still hope for you guys to, I guess, reconquer and reclaim your own country? Because it does, from the outside looking in, it does look like you have already been conquered and it has fallen. Is that true, or was that be a little bit of a misperception from those of us on the outside?
Well, it's understanding thought, looking from the outside in. I don't think it has. If Europe has fallen, then America is gone as well, because there's no way that America can regain an element of freedom and hope if all around is on fire. It will come to the US as well. But I don't think it has fallen. And it's only been in the last probably 4 months that I've been hopeful that there is any pushback. And up to then, I've been quite, I mean, as a Christian, you always hope and you always believe that God will step in, and we know what the future at the end holds. But when you're in the middle of that fire, it still can be concerning. And the pushback is the rise of populism across Europe. We have the Alternative for Deutschland, the party in Germany, doubling their vote share from 10 to 20%. Still, they're in opposition. We've got the FPÖ, the Freedom Party in Austria, getting 29%, I think. They won the election, but yet weren't allowed to form the government. But the people will see through that. And then, of course, you've got Orban in Hungary. You've got Meloni down in Italy, and she's refound her confidence, let's say. I could say things more derogatory, but she's refound her confidence because of President Trump. And she can look at Trump, and say, oh, well, now you've got my back. I can now be bold in speaking truth and pushing back the mass immigration. And of course, Marine Le Pen in France, doing exceptionally well. And Macron is a very weak leader in France. And that is a political vacuum. And I think that that Marine Le Pen can fill that. And then Geert Wilders in Holland. So you've got so many bright sparks, and that's without even going up to Scandinavia with the Swedish Democrats, and they're pushing back on the chaos in Scandinavia. So if you'd asked me that question as Europe fallen 6 months ago, I would have probably nodded along and just ordered another stiff drink. But seeing the rise of populism in Europe, which hasn't seen the rise of the churches yet, but is seeing a pushback in terms of the politics, I think there is hope, and I think that Europe can be saved.
Yeah, and I think you really hit on some important points there, because it is, I think Christianity for a while did cede ground, that people stood back, they let things happen, they believed it when people told them, you guys are out of step with where the country is now, that we're going to form a more secular nation, get away from our traditional values. But there's been immense pushback. We've followed the story out of Romania really closely, because I've been over there a few times now to work with AUR. We'll be heading back again here shortly. I'll have more details on that as I'm allowed to start bringing some things forward. But you're right. There's been a rise of a populist right movement across Europe, and the statists, the whatever you want to call them, the Eurocrats, they're now flailing, trying to push back and stop this movement. And I think their days are numbered, as you mentioned. With Le Pen and the growth of right wing populism in multiple nations now, and watching the EU Parliament and the Eurocrats push back and try to stop this, use, again, lawfare like we've seen here in the U.S., or as like we just saw in Romania, basically just trying to shove their fingers in the ears, pretend the last election didn't happen, and then pull Kalen Georgescu off future ballots. So to me, when I see them flail like this, that tells me we really are the ones that are winning, and that it may take a little bit of time, but there is still hope to save Europe from this globalist conglomerate that wants total domination over every nation, wants to control everything they do. They're from energy usage to the monetary system to everything. And actually, let's go ahead and pull the first story that you sent over to us. Well, actually, I think we'll pull these first two. Elon Musk expresses support for Reform UK rival after dispute. And Nigel Farage says there is no way back into reform for Rupert Lowe after MP claims party tried to silence his mass deportations demand over grooming gang attacks. So what are your thoughts on this, Peter?
So this is a really, really big story, and this all really kicked off the 1st of January whenever Elon Musk posted Free Tommy Robinson. And yes, I've known Tommy for 15, 16 years, visited him in every prison he's been in the last 10 years. And
that's terrible.
And I know, but I remember looking at my phone I remember where I was standing, looking at my phone, 1st of January, free Tommy Robinson. I think I must be in a dream. I must be still asleep. This can't be real. And realizing actually that was happening. And that started a whole conversation and highlighting from Elon Musk on the grooming gangs. And the grooming gangs are the Muslim mass rape gangs that have happened in Britain since the mid 70s. 1975 was the first report on the front of one of the local newspapers, the Rotherham Advertiser. And I think that was the first time it was highlighted. Now, he has highlighted this, and that has affected. Lord Pearson talks about 250,000 girls have probably been being part of those rape gangs, being raped. Wow. I know Sarah Champion, the Labour MP, talks about up to 1 million girls have been affected. This is a huge issue, and Tommy has been very vocal on that. So that's the context of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, well, probably Nigel Farage was hoping Elon would be his buddy. Obviously not be his first buddy, because that's only reserved for one place, but maybe further down the pecking order. And Nigel Farage has gone toe-to-toe against Tommy, really attacking him, and there's no reason for it. And I think it's just a class issue. Tommy is working class, Nigel is middle upper class, and I think it's a class issue. And obviously Nigel doesn't like sharing the spotlight with anyone. Now, into that, the election last year, in whenever it was, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, Reform, which were Nigel Farage's new party out of the Brexit party, they got 6 MPs. Did very well, but horrendously because of our voting system. And one of those MPs, Rupert Lowe, has done very well. Actually, I met Rupert last week. I'm seeing him again next week. And he's been very vocal on the grooming gangs. And why has no one done anything about this? And his social media profile has really risen. He's a businessman, very successful, and he's late 60s and wants to do good, being a politician, being an MP. And Nigel doesn't like the exposure, and he doesn't like the spotlight that's on someone else. And therefore, a allegation was made up, a bullying allegation, and within a day or two, Rupert Lowe was kicked out of the party. And Elon Musk has supported Rupert Lowe as leader of Reform. He said he would make a better leader than Nigel Farage. So this is a fascinating, obviously Elon Musk using his position, running probably the biggest social media company in the world, highlighting what is happening on issues and talking about putting money behind a new political party if Rupert Lowe launched one. So it's really interesting conversation, because Nigel with Reform, they've done great work, but they could be so much better. And I want a party that's great and not just a party that's a little bit better than the current government. So this is a fascinating story that's going to run and run.
No, it makes perfect sense, honestly. And I got to clear some chats really quick. We got FG in the Getter chat. We got Cyrus. We got Fed Up. We got Liberty Bell, Girl of Mystery, all over here in the X chat. I'm trying to see really quick if there's anybody else that I've missed while we're getting going here. We got Kim over here as well, Kim Capone, and then we've got Just a Real Person over here. And Peter, as Americans, we kind of live in a bubble over here, and I don't want to say that we typically don't care about issues going on in other countries, but being honest, we typically don't care about issues going on in other countries. We are very blessed and fortunate to live where we do here. But and Mike and I and many others, we've been trying to tell people for a while that if there's one issue outside of America that people need to be paying attention to, it's this issue right now that's going on in Europe for multiple reasons. Number one, Europe is by far our closest ally. That's the country that we trust more than any, not just trade or anything else like that. I mean, by far, if countries had brothers, I would say that that Europe would be our brother, more so than Canada or Mexico, even though we touch them. But at the same time, if this is happening there, I feel like you guys are a little bit ahead of us. So I feel like the same things that were happening 10 years ago, roughly, or maybe even sooner in Europe, are what's happening now here in America. So even if it's for selfish reasons, I try to tell Americans that they need to be paying attention to what's going on in Europe, even if you don't care, which you should, but even if you don't, because that's what's happening here. And we can look and watch and learn from what's already happened in Europe and what they're trying to do here in America now. And we can kind of see the playbook ahead of time. And so from your outside perspective of outside looking into America and already seeing these things happen firsthand in your own country, are you sort of seeing the same things starting to at least attempt, maybe before President Trump, but attempted to be played out here in America in terms of flooding our borders, bringing these Muslims in here who quite frankly hate us? And what are your thoughts on that in terms of, where are we at in the timeline, I guess, if you will, compared to what you guys have already gone through in terms of what we're going through now here in America?
Well, yeah, I agree. And the issue with Islam is it refuses to integrate. It's an ideology that takes land, that takes control. And Islam, I mean, I grew up in Ireland. I now live in London. I will go to an Irish pub every so often, but don't desperately want to live in an Irish area. I just want to live in London with other people, and you get to mix. With Islam, it has to be in a certain area, and obviously that's often around the mosque, and that's why groups will congregate around that. Islam wants to have supremacy in terms of food, with halal food that must be available. It must have supremacy in terms of law, Sharia law, Islamic law, and we have 70 Sharia courts operating in the UK, completely allowed and separate from the UK political system. You've also got Islamic schools that are here. You've got Islamic clothing, and that defines people and separates them. You've got so many areas, and that's why Islam changes a culture, changes a society. So that's the first thing. That's why it is of concern. And of course, how women are treated, how non-Muslims are treated, that should shock anyone. But then separately, you're only having a taster. I mean, you've really only got up in Michigan that really has a focus on Islam and that way of life. But it will become much bigger. As an example, in the UK, our change of demographics, Lord Pearson had asked the government a written question on demographic changes on the population over 15 years. I think it was something like from 2005 to 2020 or something. So over those 15 years, what has been the growth of the UK population as a whole, and what has been the growth of the Islamic population? And these differences are stark. The UK population went up by, I think it was 10.7%. The Islamic population went up by 110%. That's 10 times difference. That shows the change that can happen rapidly in a society if that is allowed. And that we see that across Europe, that massive change in Muslim population, not only through immigration, but through being allowed to have 4 wives, having a lot of children. The birth rate is so different from the indigenous birth rate. And the same thing will happen in the US. Just because you're behind doesn't mean it will not come to you. It just means you've got time to think about it. And I really hope and pray that over these 4 years that this is and it is a threat to the cohesion of America. I pray that it's taken seriously and policies are put in place to actually hold on to what it means to be American and the freedoms you have, and to make sure and hold off that attack, which I think is primarily from Islam, although it comes from many other sources. But that's certainly a huge issue that we have faced in Europe and is a warning to the States.
Yeah, well, as they say, demographics are destiny. And, this is something, as you kind of alluded to, that we've only really started to experience over the last 4 years while Biden left our border open and facilitated this invasion. Because now we do have all these little pockets of incohesion throughout the country, whether it's the 20,000 Haitians that live just north of me in Springfield, Ohio, where they eat the cats and dogs, or Tren de Agua taking over southern Chicago and Aurora, Colorado. But it's all these little pockets now that are their own little independent colony, essentially, that does not integrate in with the rest of society here. Now, thankfully, we are starting to see mass deportations. We actually got a story to cover later where apparently a lot of our facilities are now completely filled up with people that we can't get them flown out of the country fast enough. And we're even starting to see an increase in people self-deporting. But I kind of want to go back to something else that you said earlier, Peter. that, related to Nigel Farage. And I wish I could remember who I was listening to the other day, but it wasn't somebody I was particularly familiar with, but it was a commentator out of the UK. And something that they brought up with why Elon Musk seems to gravitate more towards Low and some others is Nigel Farage is not an out front leader anymore. That he tends to lead from behind. He'll talk about the grooming gangs or this or that, but only once it's socially acceptable to do so, instead of being the tip of the spear and the person that's willing to speak up and sound the alarms. And this particular commentator, they said where this really disappointed him more than anything else is with the level of censorship and arresting people for social media posts, that this is just an affront to free speech, an affront to free thought, and the values that all of us assumed would be enshrined essentially forever within the United States, Great Britain, and then throughout many countries in Europe and the rest of the Western world. But now we're seeing this erosion, this pushback on free speech and other things from these leftist globalists all over the world, that in order for them to maintain message dominance, the only thing they can do is silence any opposition and now lock them up for holding any beliefs outside of what they say is socially acceptable.
No, I agree, and I've got a lot of respect for Nigel, because without him, we wouldn't have had Brexit in some shape or form. So,
agreed.
I've a lot of respect, and he should have a statue in a plinth somewhere in the middle of London celebrating the 25-year battle that he fought to actually defeat the European Union in the UK. But that aside, the issue we face is a different issue in terms of demographics, mass immigration, and that clash between Islam and the freedoms we have in the West. And Nigel hasn't got that. And you're right that Nigel and Trump are so different. I think Nigel may wish that he was the British Trump, but President Trump does policy. He puts policy out, often on Twitter, on X, and I can imagine his officials maybe panicking that he may put something out, but he does it because he believes it's right, and he leads from the front. Nigel is quite different. Nigel will do a focus group, and he will find out what people think and find out whether his message fits in with that. If it does, he will speak it. If it doesn't, he won't. And that's what I love, it where Trump just goes with what he believes. He's a conviction individual. I was going to say conviction politician. He's not a politician, but he does things by conviction. Nigel does things by consensus. And consensus has got us into the trouble in Europe. And it's that conviction, belief in certain ideals that actually win us through. And that's why we are all hitching our carts to the Trump horse, that we actually will be pulled out of the mess that we are in Europe.
Well, we're going to have to sit on that for a second, take a quick break, hear from our sponsor, and then we're going to be right back with with more. I didn't realize how far late and how far over we were, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. But I'm sure for this, I hope I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
Thank you for staying with us. And again, the best way to support our program and all the great programs here on Ex America News is by supporting our sponsors. And again, Annie Cyrus is the one that makes a lot of these shows happen. If they're not for her, a number of the programs that we carry wouldn't be on here, both with all her work as a producer and helping to cultivate these programs and all the great work that she's done behind the scenes, like building our website. You can now go to examericanews.com. Our site is brand new, up today. I know I'm still missing a bio, and we got to fill in a few other things that are my fault. But you can go there, get our whole lineup, get background information, find out when every program airs, and there's going to be a lot more coming on soon. Make sure you sign up for our free email newsletter. We're going to have some things happening with that shortly, and you can find out about all the other things that we're doing in the meantime. We're going to have some special events coming up soon. There's already some information about those, but again, a lot of changes, and it's a place to keep your eye on. All right, let's actually go ahead and pull our next story here, because this is something that Derrick and I discussed months ago when this happened, but we've got more developments here too. Burke family travels to Washington, D.C. Ahead of, oh man, now I can't remember. Yeah, TC White House visit. I'm sure my pronunciation was way off there. Oops. And family of Enoch Burke hauled away by security at Washington, D.C. black tie gala attended by Ireland's PM after disrupting the event in protest of jailed teacher who refused to use pronoun they for a boy. And again, you guys will remember this. We talked about this a while back, that this poor guy, this poor teacher, was arrested for refusing to participate in someone else's delusion.
This is a really, really big story, and the word you were missing was Taoiseach. That's your Gaelic for the day. So your Irish Gaelic is Taoiseach, which
Taoiseach.
literally, look, I grew up in the Republic of Ireland, but I don't know Irish, but that basically means Prime Minister. It's the Irish for Prime Minister. And
Okay.
the Prime Minister of Ireland has travelled. He's very, very far in the left. I'm sure it's full Trump derangement syndrome, and is having to work through his issues now. But he travelled along with a delegation to meet President Trump and to talk through trade policies. Ireland has really relied on America because it's English speaking, it's well educated, and on the edge of Europe. And a lot of US companies have been based in Ireland, especially the tech and the pharmaceutical companies. So it's a big thing for Ireland, US investment. So the Prime Minister has gone over, and this story about the teacher, Enoch Burke, and as a Christian, he said, no, there are two genders, and it doesn't matter whether the child in the class wants me to refer to a different gender. I'm going to I'm an adult. There are a few grown-ups left in the room, and I'm going to refer to that child as they are, either a boy or a girl. And the Irish judicial system were up in arms. How dare you do the evil thing of referring to a boy as a boy? That is disgusting. We can't have that in Ireland. We are a land of the free and the open and of tolerance. And he went to jail for 500 days. A year and a third. It is unbelievable when people first hear the story, and you say I've covered it, but when people first hear the story, they literally cannot believe the level of madness that means. But that is Ireland. It is the UK as well. We've had a lot of legal battles over this, and it's happening in Europe in pockets as well. And we also have the whole thing, which I know you faced, of furries, of children thinking they're actually animals.
Oh, yeah.
And you must give them their litter tray and, I don't know, stroke them under the chin and all of that. And we had a British government government minister talking about individuals that call themselves a llama, and that identity as a llama must be respected and cared for. And it's that madness. And Enoch Burke, as a teacher, said, no, this is nonsense. One, I have a little bit of common sense. And two, I'm a Christian. I just can't engage in such nonsense. And for 500 days. And the interesting thing is he's obviously traveled over. He traveled to DC, I think, yesterday or maybe the day before. And there are rumors that actually the Trump administration may offer him political asylum on terms of religious persecution, which will really piss the Irish government off. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that
we should. Based on everything you just told us, we absolutely should offer him political asylum. 100%.
I mean, we did just send Rosie O'Donnell over there. So, I mean, if that's not considered a strike back or a blow to your country, I don't know what is. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we give you Harry.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. We got a lot to send. Like there's no way we can just send one person over to make up for Harry. We can send dozens to make up for that. Really quick, I want to give a quick shout out to Under the Feet of Jesus and Christina, both in the chat here. And then Cyrus, had some good comments here from the people in the audience here. Cyrus says the alliance between the Islamists and the Marxists is very strategically aimed to destabilize the West. And then Christina says the globalist goal is to create an Islamic world of Sharia law, and it's becoming to look just like that. And then I had a kind of a question for you as well, Peter. So we saw over here when Vice President J.D. Vance went over there, and he made the comments of talking about people being thrown in prison and such for free speech, and that we don't want that out of an ally sort of thing. I would love to get your thoughts on how that was received from the people, who have the same thoughts as you that live within Europe. And obviously the people over here were excited about it, but the leftists, people made a big deal out of it. So I just wanted to know what Europe thought about it. And then earlier you had mentioned that over the last 4 months is when you really started to feel some sort of shift and some hope again. Does that have anything at all to do with President Trump getting elected and some of the rhetoric and some of the things that he says about this? Or do you think it's more of a coincidence? And sorry, I'm giving you two questions there, but I'd love to get your thoughts on those two things.
Your second one, yes, it is the Trump effect. And the Trump effect is a worldwide effect. And we were seeing Orban basically was holding the fort in Europe for absolute common sense. But Hungary is a small country. And then when Giorgia Meloni got in Italy, she seemed to lose her backbone. And I remember Steve Bannon really talking about her in terms of the movement that goes back like 6-7 years, and really excited about Meloni getting into power. And she was going to be the one to push back. And that didn't happen. And I'm just thinking, if I give her the benefit of the doubt, maybe she's playing the long game. She realized she didn't have those wins. And now with President Trump in, suddenly she's got a backbone, and that's great. And there are lots of other cases happening. I mean, Musk basically speaking at the AfD conference in Germany, genius. And he obviously backed the AfD. They doubled their share, but still there's massive pushback. In France, Marine Le Pen, she actually won the election. But what happened was, in a constituency, in a voting bloc, if there was Marine Le Pen and two other parties, the other two parties came together and they pulled out. So if it was a try battle, and in 2/3 of those battle between three main candidates, the other two came together and pulled one of them out. So it meant it was Marine Le Pen against one and didn't split the vote. And therefore she didn't do as well as expected, but still did tremendously well. So there are all these shenanigans, as I like to say, happening all across Europe. But is the Trump effect so much? And J.D. Vance in Munich, it was priceless.
Yes.
And whenever J.D. was selected by President Trump, I was a little bit miffed. I wasn't jumping up and down about him maybe as much as others. I thought he got put in there maybe because of connections. But he has done phenomenally well. He is very well spoken. He understands the threat. He doesn't get riled, and seems to have a strong vision for what you want for freedom in the world. And of course, he's not just there for 4 years, but we hope and pray that actually he's in the White House for 12 years. So it's a long term. And that position was probably the most important that Trump will ever have put in, much more important than 2016, because this is his legacy. This is the MAGA legacy. So the speech, J.D. Vance didn't go down too well. He went into the heart of Europe and was there to speak on defense and told them that they have no free speech. They didn't like it. The German government got so irate. And the next day, I think they spoke and very angry at what he had said. And of course, there's pushback on with X on Twitter in Europe, and the restrictions on free speech from the Digital Services Act in Europe and the Online Safety Bill in the UK that are a massive clampdown on free speech. But J.D. Vance told it as it was. He said that there is a huge attack and onslaught on free speech, and that is because the establishment fear what is coming. They fear the will of the people. They fear the rise of populism, and they have every right to be afraid of that.
Yeah, and I think you've got that exactly right. Like, you really hit the nail on the head right there. That's their real fear, is this message gaining more traction, gaining more ground. And I think you also nailed it too. With Trump's election, kind of gave a lot of people air cover to say the things they really wanted to say, to be a little more brave, because now they've got an ally in D.C. instead of somebody like Biden, or really Biden's puppet masters, who were all in on globalism, that wanted expansion of EU powers, wanted suppression of free speech across our nation, every others, especially as it's been unveiled all the things that went on behind the scenes to influence Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms from taking people down and banning them, to putting up straight up false information, and knowing that it would feed into their narrative, and they can always say sorry later, that was a mistake. But I think removing a lot of those things and putting Trump in office and this agenda moving forward now has been an inspiration to a lot of people. Guys, we got to take one more quick break, and then we're going to be back to wrap things up. So stay with us.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Thank you for staying with us. And you can support a great patriot like Mike Lindell while supporting our program, The Insurrection, by going to MyPillow or MyStore.com and using promo code Insurrection. You'll get the best deals, the deepest discounts. And again, you're going to be helping support us and to help support Mike Lindell's war on voter fraud. Guys, I'm going to shift gears, actually, because we got a major story we need to cover, and I do want to at least get to this today. And, Peter, we're going to have you back on again soon to get in more in depth with what's going on in Europe and elsewhere around the world. But DOJ and FBI must act now. Violent left is trying to kill conservatives and their families. Family members, man, I can't read today, by having their homes swatted. They wanted the police to kill my father. And this is, this is escalating just over the last, 3 to 4 days. It's gotten totally out of control. It started with an employee over at InfoWars getting swatted twice, and now it's expanded to Gunther Engelman, Cat Turd, our friend Sean Faresh. You've seen him on our program here a few times now. And who is the other one, Derek?
Nick Sorter, Joe Pags, Mike Engelman as well. I mean, it's been a bunch of them here recently doing this, and this should be considered domestic terrorism as far as I'm concerned. I mean, or even attempted murder, because that's what they're hoping happens here when they send these armed people to this house, and you have to think about from the police officer standpoints as well. I mean, from everything they know, they're walking into a situation that is extremely dangerous. So I mean, they're on high alert as well. The whole thing, this has got to be addressed. It's got to be handled immediately.
Yeah, well, I mean, the less propensity for violence, we need to figure out how to get a handle on this, because it's getting more and more out of control. And again, like you said, I think these swattings ought to be treated as both domestic terrorism, and they find whoever charged them with attempted murder, because make no mistake about it, that's exactly what they're hoping happens. They're hoping these people are caught off guard, that they open, or the police kick in the door and they respond like I would. They grab a gun, run downstairs or run wherever to the door to try to face the threat, and instead get gunned down by a dozen guys on the local SWAT team. So I mean, that is exactly what they're trying to do. They want to silence, they want to scare people out of speaking out, or even supporting anything from the changes within Doge to pushing back against the LGBTQ tranny madness that we've had going on here or anything else. I think they're just angry and upset because they continue to lose ground. They're lashing out. And as per usual for the left, they when they don't get their way, they turn to violence.
Peter, is this an issue over there in Europe? Does this happen over there as well, or is this just an American thing right now?
It's an American thing, and I've watched as with horror at the many times. I remember Steve Bannon was swatted twice in a week or something, and it's a tool used by the left because they have no ability to argue, no ability to use reason against the policies the right are putting down. They actually resort to this violence. So it's something we don't have in Europe at all, but it's a horrendous tactic, and I really do hope that the Kash Patel does manage to get a grip on it, because if you have to phone your local sheriff to warn them that you're a person of profile, and if a call comes in, it's okay, that's a concerning state of affairs. So let's hope the FBI get a grip on it.
Agreed.
Well, and that's exactly what I had to do. So, after January 6th, I already knew I was getting a ton of threats, and I knew swatting was a thing, and I was kind of nervous about that. So I reached out to my local sheriff's department, and I know most of them anyways, and you kind of let them know what was going on. I've kind of kept in touch with them on that specific issue over the last 4 or 5 years, and I reached out to them yesterday when this was going on across the country, and said, hey, just wanted to remind you guys, what's going on. I actually also notified them and said, hey, if that happens, just know that this is a scam, and go ahead and start trying to get information out of these people to catch who it is, because it's probably all connected. And because I live in the middle of nowhere in West Virginia, but that's what has concerned me about Mike Engelman, no relation to Gunther that I'm aware of, but Mike Engelman, not Eagleman. He it lives in southern Indiana in a small community of roughly 2,800 people. It's not like it's some major city or something. And he was swatted this morning as well around 1:32 a.m. And what's crazy is he put out the post, and he said that while the police were at his house, the swatter, the person, was still on the phone with 911, giving them false information, telling them all this stuff. And he's standing right in front of the police, and they're like, oh, I've got my daughter upstairs or whatever, all this stuff. And he's standing there right there with them. So I made my people aware, not only for my own safety, but in hopes that they could go into it knowing that it was happening and get some information that would lead to the arrest of these people.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane. I want to read these next couple of headlines, but I mean, this is terrorism pure and simple, and it needs to be handled as such. Trump impersonator Sean Farash and his wife are latest conservatives to be swatted by radical leftists. Farash vows to hold those responsible accountable. Breaking: NYPD arrest agitators occupying Trump Tower over Mahmoud Khalil deportation, war in Gaza. Let me get this last one on. Oh, wait, nope, sorry, I don't have the other headline. I thought I did. But it isn't just the swattings. It's going after these Tesla dealerships, burning them down, setting cars on fire, shooting them up, and now they're even targeting private Tesla owners. Same thing. Everything from, spray painting swastikas on their car, breaking windows. We had somebody trying to do this, set themselves on fire the other day, or that might have been at one of the dealerships again. But again, it's a pattern. And I think we're headed towards another summer of love right now, that they're mad that their gravy train got cut off at USAID. A lot of their misdeeds behind closed doors are being exposed, and the country is moving in a very different direction than we were for the last 4 years under the left's tyranny.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it right now, and I don't care what get people mad or whatever. First, let me first. I know we're getting close to it here. I'm going to give a shout out to Salty Patriot, Chris, and JEC Jack over here in the X chat. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. If the left attempts to do another summer of love situation, I hope that some sort of law enforcement deputizes the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and say, "Go get them, boys." Because I'm sick of this. I'm serious. I'm not in the mood to stand around and watch these scumbags burn our country to the ground while we do absolutely nothing again. If they want to start doing that, it's time. They've already did the FA part. It's time for them to get a taste of the FO part. It's time for them to find out what's going to happen, and they need to be met with some force. It's time for us to stop allowing this to happen, and if nothing else, we need to look to Europe and other places to realize that we are under attack in this country right now. They are attempting to take this country from us, and we can either squash them now while we still are the majority and have the ability to do so, or we're going to find ourselves in a position where now either they are the majority or at the very least close to it, and it's going to be much harder to handle that. So my fear is that we do not need to kick this can down the road and leave this for our children and grandchildren to deal with. It's time for the men in this country, in America, to grow a backbone, to stand up, and to start being the resistance to this tyranny and to these people who are attempting to conquer our country. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, at the very least, be willing to do it for your children and your grandchildren, because if they're forced to do it, it's going to be much harder for them to be able to take back control of our country. It's much easier to defend it now than it will be 20, 30 years from now. So the men in this country need to grow a backbone and stand up.
I agree. And actually, you mentioned they're finding out. Maybe that new political party that Elon Musk wants to do should be FAFO. That might be a good title for a political party. But we are seeing massive billboards, anti-Musk billboards going up all over London, in England, and calling him a Nazi. I've seen 3 different ones around, and I've seen it on social media. And there's a well-funded campaign that's putting these up. It is expensive to produce big, large, full-size billboards. Not as big as the US, but a little bit smaller. But we are seeing those all over. And there's someone well-financed behind that are trying to destabilize Tesla. And we've seen, obviously, the share price attack. So it is happening here. We haven't got to the burning down chargers as yet, but it is a coordinated campaign, certainly, to demonize Musk as much as possible.
Agreed. Well, I mean, the bottom line is we can't allow the left to BLM again, to burn, loot, and murder, holding our cities hostage. And I know that's the plan that they have going forward. They think it worked in 2020, and to a certain extent, they're not wrong. I think fear is one of the major factors that had an effect on the 2020 election. That when people saw their cities burn, private citizens attacked, marches through neighborhoods where they would break windows and threaten the citizens, and the government respond by doing nothing, or respond by, you might get some arrests, maybe some trespassing violations, but then they're right back out on the street to do it again. That there was no justice, no attempt to hold anybody accountable. You combine that with COVID and all the restrictions there, it was a firestorm. We cannot allow that to happen again. I don't care if it's the Proud Boys or if it's the National Guard. As we start seeing major action like this throughout any city, it needs to be squashed immediately, and people need to suffer the price for what they've done. Now, I'm not saying they need to be abusive like our government was towards the J6 defendants, but they need to serve the time for the crimes they commit, instead of a lot of these people were de facto rewarded because they would go back afterwards, file lawsuits against the city, and then be paid out for millions and millions of dollars. And I'm sorry, you should not be able to financially benefit for participating in what I consider to be terrorist acts. But again, I mean, the nice thing is, or the good thing we have right now, is Trump actually has a spine. I think he learned his lesson from before, that it's going to be no more Mr. Nice Guy. If this stuff starts really happening in mass in cities this summer, that I think will be put down quick, and a message will be sent. And then we're going to just watch the left run to the nearest MSNBC or CNN reporter to cry about how their voices aren't being heard, and somehow this is attacking free speech.
Sorry. I was over here. I was in the comments, reading the comments and everything, and in the chats here. Also got to give a shout out to Smash over here as well. Appreciate you for tuning in. Thaddeus brought up a really good point earlier. I don't know the exact wording because I'm not going to scroll back up and find it, but he said, it's when you mentioned earlier in the show, we were talking about giving political asylum to somebody from Ireland, and he's like, I never in my wildest dreams imagine that we'd be living at a time right now where we're giving political asylum to someone from Ireland or Britain or somewhere like that. I mean, that's where we're at right now as a world, I guess, if you will, that we're even having that discussion. And that really shows you just what kind of shape some of those countries are in over there right now, that they would potentially be seeking political asylum or even religious asylum here to the U.S. That's really sad and really scary to think about it.
Yeah, the whole range with Enoch Burke and also Tommy Robinson, I think, will have to seek political asylum in the US as well. He is an enemy of the state, and the state will stop at nothing until actually they remove him from society in whatever way they choose to do that. So I think he will be another one that will seek political asylum. It didn't happen before. Now I think there is a possible pathway in terms of President Trump and Elon Musk support of Tommy. But yeah, you're right. It shows how Europe has slipped, that actually people need to escape Europe to protect their own lives and travel to America. That conversation, you wouldn't even have had that conversation maybe going back 10 years ago, but we have changed massively over the last decade.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then a quick shout out to American Patriot in the Getter chat. American says, I didn't know this. American Patriot says there's a city in New Jersey claiming to be the Mecca of the USA. And that's not good if that's what we're dealing with here. And that's what's going on. They're slowly creeping in here in the United States of America as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, oops, wrong thing. That's the thing. Like, with I think what Europe really illustrates right now is the importance of making sure our rights aren't just enshrined, but they are constantly defended and protected. Because the minute you start letting them chip away at that and strip you of your protections from government, that there's really no stopping them. That now, like, what started as free speech violations and throwing people in jail, like, who knows what that escalates to next? And again, these globalists, that's what they want, is maximum authority. They don't want anybody able to question them, stop them, or get in their way, or do anything else to interfere or intervene with their agenda. I think part of why they're so upset right now, and why we're seeing these crackdowns here and around the world, is because the brakes have been put on a lot of this WEF agenda that they've adopted. That a lot of these things are not going to be able to happen. They're not going to be able to move forward with nations beginning to withdraw from the WHO and reject their plans and their policy. They're upset that they're getting rejected, and they're lashing out by trying to destroy free speech and the other freedoms that people have here and around the world. Again, that's why we have to stand to protect them at all costs, no matter what.
That's exactly right. We do have to, and you know, I hope that our fellow Christians around the world are able to, you know, like over in Europe and everything, are able to do that. But you know, we also have to remember, and this is what really frustrates me with Christians in America. I'm going to step on some toes right now, and that's okay. But Christians in America as a whole are soft. Point blank, period, soft. That's what it comes down to. We have our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ over in other countries who are getting their heads cut off right now for nothing more than being a Christian. And then you've got a bunch of people over here in America who are said, well, I don't want to say that there are only two genders because I don't want to touch, you know, politics. There's nothing political about that, people. And guess what? If you go to a church where your pastor or your preacher is afraid to say that abortion is murder, or they're afraid to say that there's only two genders, then that's not a man of God that you need to be following. If they are so weak that they can't step up and say there's only two genders or abortion is murder, then that's not somebody that I would want to follow, or I would want my family to follow as well. And that's the major issue right now is Christians as a whole in America are soft and weak and are standing by right now and letting these people conquer us right before our very eyes because they're too afraid of offending somebody with the truth.
Agreed. Well, we are almost out of time here. Peter, do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with? And where can they find you and follow you?
I have no words after Derrick gave that. So you want my wisdom? No, I agree. I agree 100%, Derrick. It is Christians afraid to speak truth. And that's what's got us into this mess, a fear of offense over a concern of speaking truth. But no, it's wonderful to me because I love when I go on shows and haven't met people, go on and it works. So you connect with them, you understand the issues, you're thinking very similar on a lot of stuff, and it's great, and it shows kind of a worldwide community of like-minded people that actually stand up for freedom and actually base it on biblical values. And And that means you can slip in with someone, you can connect over something the first time you meet them, and then slip out. So it's been great to be with you. It's great to be on Ex American News. It's an exciting platform, and I'm looking forward to being part of it and to promoting it, and as it building together with the range of people you brought on. It is exciting. But you can, for Hearts of Oak, you can follow us at Hearts of Oak UK on X and at Hearts of Oak everywhere else. heartsofoak.org, and it'll be every Monday and Thursday. We have guest interviews it'll generally be 3 p.m. Eastern. We're in a 2-week phase where our clocks are different. So we've only got 4 hours across the Atlantic. We normally have 5. I don't know why we changed, or you changed yours before we changed ours. We should really coordinate.
We don't know either.
Anyway.
We don't know either. But, you know, we are very lucky to have you here joining us at Ex American News. I'm looking forward to all the great work you do, and anything that we can do to help you expand that. And Peter, when the time comes for you to flee and you need to seek asylum here, you just let us know. We'll make sure you've got a safe place, your house. You can stay over here till we find you a place of your own. To our audience, again, I want to thank you guys for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. Everybody be safe this weekend, and we'll be back on Monday with even more.